first and foremost, the judge obviously disagreed with that argument, setting the tone for the urgency. And as our team laid out in court, this order effectively forces states to prepare for the effective date of that order, has an impact now, and more importantly, created a cloud of uncertainty for children being born here and in Seattle, all across Washington, and all across the country. And so the urgency by which we moved was effective and appropriate and supported by the court.
That was Nick Brown. Keep an eye on him. Attorney General, Washington, who had a very successful day in court today, in federal court in Seattle, Washington, in a very important case for America and our values and ideals, because he, along with several other attorneys general, were able to block, for now, the birthright citizenship order of Donald Trump, which would deny to babies and other human beings born on U.S. soil the right to U.S. citizenship, not the gift, as Donald Trump refers to it, the constitutionally protected right of jus soil. To be born here is to have your citizenship here, except under very limited circumstances, which don't apply, like if you're the child of a diplomat from another country. I'm Michael Popok. Guess where you are? Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Let's dive in. I'm hot over this particular hot take. Judge John C. Coffenor, keep an eye on him as well. Senior status judge, federal court, Washington and Seattle, appointed by Ronald Reagan. He was, talk about hot, he had a hot bench today when the lawyer, I think, pressed into duty in the last 48 hours by the Trump administration. I mean, 2 days ago, Brett Shumate, an appellate federalist MAGA lawyer, was a partner in Jones Day, a major law firm over on the West Coast. He's MAGA, Federalist Society, clerk for Edith Jones in the Fifth Circuit, who's the rightest of right wing. She'd make Clarence Thomas blush. That's where this guy came from, and he was a partner in a private law firm until 2 days ago. They were like, "Oh, we need an appellate lawyer to go argue this ridiculous position that the executive order, which has every federal agency look a mother and a child in the eye and a baby in the eye and say, we are denying you children's health care. We're denying you food stamps. We're denying you Medicare, Medicaid, Head Start, and all other federal programming and federal funding, right? Because your mother's undocumented, because your mother is here temporarily on an asylum status." That's not how the Constitution works. That's not how the 14th Amendment works. Never has, never will. There's a United States Supreme Court precedent from 1898 which says exactly that. Now, they've been hanging their hat at the Department of Justice under Donald Trump under a stray piece of language in the 14th Amendment, Section 1, that says, unless the person is subject to the territorial jurisdiction of another country. That has been interpreted time and time again to apply only to foreign diplomats. You know, their argument is, oh, well, the mother's undocumented, so she's really subject to the laws of fill in the blank, Mexico, Indonesia, whatever, and therefore the child is also subject to those laws. Right, a baby born in New Hampshire from Indonesian parents here on temporary asylum status is subject to the laws of Indonesia, is actually governed by the emperor or whatever of Indonesia. Come on. It's such a ridiculous argument that when Shumate opened his mouth to try to make that argument, Judge Coffenor shut him down in less than 20 seconds. Says, "Wait, stop. So I'd love to be a judge one day. Stop. I want to make sure I understand this fundamentally. Are you taking the position that this executive order denying birthright citizenship under our United States Constitution, the 14th Amendment, is constitutional? Yes, I am. Absolutely. I love the double down. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you heard at the top, Nick Brown say, well, we knew we had this in the bag as soon as Judge Coffenor opened his mouth and started, doing a live or autopsy of our opponent. I mean, these are my words. He said, I don't know, the judge says, how anybody who's a member of the bar can come into my courtroom and make that position. In 40 years, I have never seen a more blatantly unconstitutional provision or executive order in my life. When you start there, if you're the other side, like Nick Brown and the rest of the attorney generals from this case representing Arizona, Illinois, Oregon, and Washington, you sit down. I've been on the other side of that, where my opponent just the judge just rips out their heart and shows it to them. And I was about to get up for my argument, and I just sat down. That's the best argument you can make, is no argument. You don't want to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory at that moment, right? So you stay quiet. You let the judge do the heavy lift. And that's what happened here. The judge also said, let me get this straight. Let me just test your jurisdictional theory. Are these people, these undocumented and people with, compromised immigration status, are they subject to the criminal laws of the United States? Oh, they are the criminal laws. Yes. Yeah, they can't jaywalk or commit crimes. Okay, but not citizenship. He said, well, I don't get it. I thought you just said if they're subject to the laws and jurisdictions of another country, then the baby is not a U.S. citizen, but they're subject to the laws of this country, at least the criminal laws of this country, right? Yes, but that's different, Judge. We're talking about citizenship. It's that kind of ridiculous, asinine argument with no intellectual integrity or honesty that is easily shot down by judges like this. And so the judge entered what we call in the business a temporary restraining order for 14 days to allow for full briefing until we get to a preliminary injunction, which we call in the business a PI. I will tell you in 35 years, anytime I've gotten a temporary restraining order, TRO, I've always gotten the PI. I've never lost the next step. And that's what's going to happen here. Coffenor, even after full briefing and another round of hearings, is not going to change his mind when he starts with the proposition that this is the most blatantly unconstitutional thing I've ever seen in my courtroom. And he's the one that also said, and this is a great quote, and I really want to get it right. So let me pull it up from my little quote machine. He said, there are times in world history, this is Judge Coffenor now, appointed by Ronald Reagan, where we look back and people of goodwill will say, where were the judges and where were the lawyers? In other words, now is the time for judges and lawyers to step forward and oppose Donald Trump on the battlefield of constitutional rights. That's what we're watching. This is what we have built the Legal AF and Midas Touch for, to be there at ringside seats for this battle. And look how smartly these cases opposing the birthright citizenship executive order, right, that just got entered on Monday. We're here already talking on just Friday or Thursday and Friday about these issues. Look how smartly these cases were filed. Not one, not two, but 3 separate cases. 22 states split the load. 4 states went to Washington State and Seattle, got before Judge Coffenor. Right? 18 states and 2 cities filed in Massachusetts. The NAACP and the ACLU, coordinated, I'm sure, filed in New Hampshire. What do they all have in common? They are all progressive or Democratic or moderate to liberal federal courts with federal judges. Smart. What else do they have in common? They all feed into appellate courts, the 9th in Washington, the 1st in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, that are also leaned center-left. Important as you try to get to the United States Supreme Court. All of these cases, to answer the question I know comes up in the chat sometimes, just because Judge Coffenor has ruled doesn't do a darn thing to the other 2 cases. They still have to get rulings from those judges. Now, of course, each judge will say, well, as Judge Coffenor said in Washington, and we agree with that analysis. So they'll cite each other, but they make their own decisions. And the reason you file 3 and you flood the zone is in case you don't get a Judge Coffenor to give you a great decision. You get a lousy decision. You got 2 more cases to rely on. Yeah, and if there's a split between them, you have a ticket right to the United States Supreme Court too, with a split decision. Each of these, what else do they have in common? The third thing they have in common is that each of these appellate jurisdictions, the 9th and the 1st, are headed by United States Supreme Court justices who are moderate to liberal to progressive. So first stop on the emergency application for an appeal stage is going to be liberal judges on the Supreme Court. Now you see what happened here. Well, they don't think the Democrats and the moderates and fair-thinking people were watching them, and all the times for 4 years in the Biden administration, they ran to Texas and they ran to the 5th Circuit. We saw it. Now watch us. Watch 20 attorneys general led by California and New York and Washington. And Arizona. Watch them in action and what courts they're going to be filing in and what judges they're going to pull. Just to give a historical reference here. Same federal courthouse in Seattle that Judge Coffenor sits in, same federal courthouse who a number of years ago blocked one of the first executive orders from Donald Trump the first time around, the Muslim travel ban. So it wasn't just random selection. It wasn't natural selection. Did it on purpose. Yeah, we forum shop. What are you going to do about it? Now, the Republicans are all up in arms. They're trying to counter-program already. Oh, you might have heard that it's been blocked, but we'll see about that. Yeah, we will see about that. Now, look, I know what they're going to do. So let me just say it out loud. They're going to get some MAGA attorney general of their own like, I don't know, the guy in Texas, to go file his suit in front of his friendly judge to get a friendly decision there. And then we're going to have a split in the courts. We're going to get the Fifth Circuit to say, no, you can by executive order get rid of birthright citizenship in the Constitution. No, you can't. There's only two ways to get birthright citizenship out of the Constitution. You have to have an amendment to the Constitution, which counters it, with a 2/3 vote of the House, the Senate, and 2/3 of the states. Not happening. Or you got to get a Supreme Court to interpret the 14th Amendment, Section 1 in a way that allows for the executive order. I don't believe that's happening either. Now, I get it. Some people are saying, Popok, come on. It's the same Supreme Court reading the same 14th Amendment, but this time Section 3 that found that an insurrectionist could end up on the ballot, and be president. They misread all the words. Were you asleep? Have you fallen asleep in a field of poppies? No. But on this particular issue, when they're not trying to help Donald Trump win an election and get him back on the ballot on the issue of birthright citizenship with Amy Coney Barrett with 8 children, even this Chief Justice Roberts is not going to rip away from the Constitution and over 124 years of precedent and side with MAGA on this one, especially when they have something called the major decisions major decisions doctrine, which says that if it's going to be something really big, like ripping up the Constitution, we don't want to see an executive order do it. At the very least, let's see a congressional law that we can compare to the Constitution. You're not going to see that either. So I don't see this, even on an emergency application, and I don't care what the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals could say about this. This Supreme Court getting 5 votes to take away what's been on the books for over 140 years. I just don't see it. If I'm wrong, I'll come back and tell you I'm wrong. And sometimes I'm wrong, but a lot of times I'm right. Here on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF, and I appreciate that. There are just to give you a little bit of a context here, there are 25,000 babies born in California every year that obtain birthright citizenship, whose parents are undocumented, or the mother's undocumented, or doesn't have a status, and the father isn't naturalized either. So to multiply that across all the other states, we're talking about millions of children every year. One of them could grow up to be a president of the United States. Absolutely. And it's their right. Donald Trump talks about it as a gift. It is a gift of it's not a gift of MAGA. It's a constitutionally enshrined right. That's why Judge Coffiner was like, this is the most blatantly unconstitutional thing I've ever seen. And he's a Reagan Republican. He's not a moderate. He's not a progressive. The guy's 84 years old. He's a country club Republican. He's like, wake up. And they trot these earnest, shiny, Federalist, freshly minted U.S. attorneys and Department of Justice personnel in. I mean, they're only 3 days old. They're like horses, just coming out of the foals, just coming out of being pregnant. They're all stumbly and bumbly. Oh, absolutely, it's absolutely not constitutional, and you know better. This is political pandering of the first order. I would put about 2/3 of the 200 or more executive orders by Trump as being exactly that. It's not even worth the paper it's written on. None of those are going to get through. The ones that matter to Trump and MAGA. None, and he knows it. I'm going to continue to follow the 3 cases. I think that's enough. Maybe a 4th case filed by MAGA right here on Legal AF. Now look. With your help, we're doing it. I'm just the cockles of my heart are just warmed over. We have been building at a rapid, almost unprecedented pace. We're up to 420,000 subscribers. We've added 50,000 subscribers in the last 30 days, and all free. On our way to 500,000 by our half birthday, which is about a month and a half away. We stand on the shoulders of the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF, the 5-year-old podcast that I co-founded. And we're here curating amazing, I can't even tell you. We got Sean Wu here. We got Dina Dahl. We got Karen Freeman McNiffalo. We got me, and we got Court Accountability Action and True North Research, all here on the Legal AF channel. I'm doing 5-6 videos a day here. I'm doing another 3 or 4 videos a day on Midas Touch and the podcast. And I'm talking, just to kind of get you behind the curtain here for a minute. I'm talking to 9 new potential contributors, I believe, on Monday. I'm not gonna tease you anymore, but you're gonna love each and every one of them and their diverse voices here on Legal AF. So until my next contribution to all things Legal AF, I'm Michael Popok, and I am reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.